Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World, episode 41, with me, John Jordan. In this episode, I'm talking to Luna Javier, who is the creative director and a co-founder at Altitude Games out of Manila in the Philippines. Now, Altitude Games is best known as a free-to-play mobile game developer, but it's working on its first blockchain game, a game called Battle Racers. So we talk a bit about that decision to go into blockchain and also about the partnership the company has with Decentraland, as Battle Racers will be one of the first projects available as part of Decentraland when that launches later on in 2019. But the main bulk of the interview, getting into the detail of Battle Racers, and particularly how the non-blockchain and blockchain elements are set up. So we all know there's a big problem with onboarding and getting people to play a game without necessarily having Ether. So with Battle Racers, there's a whole practice mode where you can play the whole game using the vehicles and building vehicles and racing them. That has no connection to the blockchain. But if you want to get involved in the blockchain side of things, you can create vehicles. Vehicles are made of 4 different components. So you can open loot boxes, win loot boxes to create these cars and vehicles, and then you can put them on the blockchain and then race them in different tournaments where your success is recorded into that vehicle. But neatly, and I've not heard this before, you can actually then deconstruct vehicles back to their component parts and build new vehicles out of them. Although if you do that, you lose the stats and you lose the experience points that you've gained. So quite a lot to go into, but pretty interesting to dig deep into a project that's coming, and one that I think is going to be a really nice mixture of gameplay and blockchain metagame as well. So I hope you enjoy the interview. If you want to get hold of me, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at blockchaingmg. And any comments you have, please do let me know. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. So, hello, Luna. How are things in the Philippines?
Hey John, it is very warm. The summer just started. It's about, I think, 95 degrees outside.
Just a bit warm.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds lovely. I think it will be the humidity that will get me there. So anyway, so we're going to talk today about Battle Racers. But before we get into the detail of that game, I thought it might be good to get a kind of a brief overview of Altitude Games and how you kind of transitioned from mobile, although you're still making mobile games, but how you've gone from mobile into being more focused on blockchain.
Sure. So I'm the creative director of Altitude Games, and we started about 5 years ago, primarily focused on mobile games. And the reason we started doing blockchain games was when CryptoKitties came out end of 2017. We got really excited about this new, what I consider a new gaming platform. Really, blockchain would just be the technology to enable design features that weren't possible before. And so we are still making mobile games, but we are also transitioning ourselves, I would say, to make blockchain games. And our first blockchain game will be Battle Racers.
Great. So Battle Racers is one of the interesting things, for me at least, is that you've kind of partnered up with Decentraland, which is, I guess we're kind of seeing it as a kind of second life type environment in a blockchain environment with lots of user-generated content. And now we're starting to see some of these kind of more professional kind of partnerships kind of rolling out as Decentraland, I think, gets closer to its kind of public launch. But can you talk a little bit about, why you chose to partner up with Decentraland for Battle Racers? Because as far as I understand it, Battle Racers will just be available within Decentraland. So,
right. So Battle Racers on Decentraland was actually just of a lucky happenstance. We were already prototyping different blockchain game ideas when we started talking to them. And so they were looking for content for their virtual land. And our current prototype at the time was this little racing game on mobile. And we realized that it would be so much better to put it in a world like that. Obviously there are so many players, waiting for Decentraland to launch, and we're lucky enough to be one of their launch titles as well. And that said, we are thinking of maybe later on possibly doing something else with Battle Racers, and that's the beauty as well of non-fungible tokens, right? So I wouldn't say that it's impossible for us to have other Battle Racers games in the future, but right now we are a launch title for them.
yeah, I definitely think that's one of the strengths, as you say, Decentraland. Um, everyone's quite looking forward, anticipating its launch. I mean, it's been going as a project since 2017 with lots of community support. So hopefully, at least, it will solve one of the big issues with blockchain games, which is getting users. I think it should be a lot of people who are actually fairly experienced in blockchain stuff will be kind of logging in to Decentraland when it goes live. But let's focus on battle races, at least the first kind of incarnation of how you're seeing it. So I guess the title suggests a racing game with battling elements. What was the kind of idea? What was the idea behind the game? How did that one come about?
Okay, so we were playing with the idea for quite some time, where because our games on mobile are casual games, and so we're very focused on a game experience where you can pick up and play very easily, very quickly, but at the same time have a lot of depth. If you're a more hardcore gamer, for maybe 30 days, 60 days, 365 days, etc. And so our little racing game, what we wanted to do was to have a game where you could play very quick matches. So you have these cars, right? And your cars you can customize, you can build them kind of like RC cars or model cars like Tamiya, which is really popular here in the Philippines. So you build your car, and every part that makes up the car has stats with it. So there's speed, durability, how well you do on straight roads versus turns and things like that, and weight. And so you build this little car and you go to the track, right? Because it's Decentraland, so it's kind of an arcade experience where you're physically walking into this arcade, and you see a racetrack, and you go there with 3 other players. You put your cars down on the track, and you battle it out. And so, on one hand, your car by itself might have better or worse stats than your opponents. And if it were a Tamiya race, then you just kind of let the car, go on its own, and then at the end you see who wins. But we want it to be more of a game, so we wanted player interaction with it. And so, what's fun about battle racers is you can put weapons on the car. And so, let's say I could have, a not so fast car with giant missiles on it. And now I actually have a fighting chance by blasting my opponent off the track, or kind of off the lane. We have very cool weapons, like we have bear traps to freeze people in place. We have a bunch of those. And so now it's not just who has the better car, which is obviously part of the fun is building your car, but also as a gamer, I want to have a fighting chance against everybody else. And so the skills and the weapons come into play. And so what we have built is kind of our ideal blockchain game where the gameplay is a real game, if you know what I mean. Like it's really, yeah, like it's fun to play. Like you would play it whether you knew it was on the blockchain or not. So that was important to us. But at the same time, if you understand the blockchain, you understand what you can do with these cars if you tokenize them. And I guess we'll talk about that later on. But now, if you understand the blockchain, you understand buying and selling of the market, you understand how these cars can, appreciate in value. Then there's a whole other layer, a whole other meta layer that you can play that may or may not be connected to the racing. But of course, if you understand both, then I think this is really a great game for you because you can actually play in real time with the tokens that you own.
And definitely think this is a trend we're seeing in 2019, that we are seeing kind of games that can be played just as a game, as an interactive experience by people who may not even know a game is on the blockchain. But then you have this, the market element as well, which some people, it's always kind of seen as some people will just play the game, some people will maybe just do the trading of items, and hopefully the majority of people will do a bit of both. Actually, one kind of a setup question. So, what platforms are you supporting? Presumably, Decentraland is PC, is it?
Yeah. So Decentraland is planning, again, trying not to speak for them, obviously, but what I understand publicly is they want to be a web and mobile platform. So you should be able to play their world on both.
Mm-hmm. Because obviously, I guess, as you guys will know, the one great thing about mobile is the size of audience that you can kind of easily get your game to. So it's kind of interesting because this obviously seems like a very kind of fun, broadly, kind of Mario Kart inspired sort of thing, which is doesn't always sit very well on the PC. So I guess again that would be another interesting thing with Decentraland, because I guess you have that existing audience is probably fairly kind of PC centric and probably fairly what we might call kind of core in some degree. So great for them to be there as well. But also, I guess the nice thing for Decentraland is to have a very accessible arcade game like Battle Racers that will potentially bring a whole group of other people into Decentraland. So it's kind of like they're getting between Decentraland and Battle Racers, you're both kind of synergenic in how you might encourage new audiences to play. So so you mentioned it a bit in terms of kind of tokenization, that kind of thing. So, but before we get into that, so a big thing, certainly for me, and I think for a lot of people in the industry, is getting people into a game, certainly a blockchain game. And we've seen in the past kind of functional technology like MetaMask doesn't really kind of scale into people who aren't interested in blockchain. So what are your thoughts at the moment? I appreciate you just in alpha, so I don't know how deep you got into this, but how are you thinking about getting people into the game and kind of handling things like, or telling people whether it's a blockchain game, things like wallets and private keys and all that kind of fun stuff?
Right. So again, coming from my mobile gaming background, people will play games on their phones. They don't necessarily understand how their phones work. They just want to play something. And so what we envision for Battle Racers is, obviously you have to be a Decentraland user to play it, just because it's in their world, like Second Life, right? So you would need a Decentraland account. And again, not speaking for them and how they're going to make their wallet, etc. I'm sure they'll be releasing information about that soon. But how we built Battle Racers is there's this giant arena. It looks like a giant car. And so imagine you're walking around this Second Life type world, and from afar you see a giant race car just glowing, and you're like, "What's that?" And so you walk in, and there are going to be different race tracks and people hanging around. You can watch other people race. And so what we wanted as a game studio is, if I had no idea what Battle Racers was, I should be able to walk into this arena, line up at the arcade table, and play, right? And that's something that some blockchain games have difficulty doing, because they really do require you to, buy the items first, for example, before even getting a taste of the gameplay, if the gameplay exists. And so what we're going to do is, so we're going to have what we call a practice track. And so a practice track is a free track, meaning you don't need to own any race cars. Again, I'm just walking into this arena. I have no idea what Battle Racers is. I walk up to the table, and when it asks me to join a race and choose my car and my weapons, I can actually test drive cars. So it's like going to a car dealership and saying, "Can I try, the Corolla versus the Camry versus the whatever?" And so there will be cars available for test drive and weapons as well. And so now, without owning anything, I can actually go and race against people or against AI. And I'm racing, I'm having fun. When the race is done, I don't get to bring the car home. I tried it, but now if I wanted to race with my own cars, then I can go and, buy crates of parts, build my own car, etc. And so what that does is it's very obviously like a free to play model where, you are free to try it and you can race as much as you want. You can't win anything, but at least you get to try different cars, and we plan to rotate the test drive cars as well, so you can actually try, new cars, different cars. And now, if I want to invest and actually buy my own cars and build them, at least I've tried the game. And then I go to the competitive tracks, which is where all the players with, tokenized cars are playing. And so that's kind of what we want to do to bring in players on Decentraland who might not have any token cars in their wallet.
I play with the practice cars on the practice tracks. This is really good. How do I then kind of get a car that is on the Ethereum blockchain? So you mentioned you get the parts. Can you put it from parts, or will it also be the option to kind of buy completed cars?
Sure. So our current plan is you can buy crates of parts. So there are different types of crates with different types of parts, obviously, and there are different rarities to the crates, different rarities to the parts. And so what we want to do is we just have like hundreds and hundreds of parts right now. And we'll announce more details in the next week or so. But when you when you buy these crates, they're actually on a separate website, so they're not inside Decentraland. They're in a completely different experience in our website on the browser, which is where a lot of blockchain gamers, purchase and play their games anyway. And so on our website, you can buy the crates of parts. You can customize. So we'll have a little garage where you can, mix and match. All of the parts of all of the cars are mix and matchable. So, for example, if I have a big tank type and I have a little sports car type, I can actually mix and match them together with no restrictions, which should make for very interesting, hybrid cars, depending on if I'm building for speed or defense or anything like that. And so on the website, mixing and matching them, those are still what we call practice cars. And so practice cars are still off chain. We're looking at using a side chain. Again, more details to come. But those practice cars, I can already play in Decentraland in those practice tracks with everybody else. Now, if I wanted to tokenize the car, which is an optional step, then I would have to pay a little fee to mint the car as an ERC721 non-fungible token. And now when it becomes an NFT, I get benefits. So the first thing is I get to race competitively on the competitive tracks. It's a completely separate arcade machine or arcade table that has rewards. So now I can actually race against someone and win more crates of parts, and that's where the competitive people can go. Second is because the car is tokenized, it starts to record history. So it will record the number of wins I get, any tournaments that I win. It will record the ownership. So as this car gets passed on, let's say from owner to owner, it gets more and more famous over time. And then the third thing is because they're tokenized, now you can buy and sell them on the mainnet. And so practice cars and parts will not be tradable. If you wanted to trade them with other players, you have to tokenize them into a car. And then again, going back to a car dealership kind of concept, right? So you're buying and selling cars from each other. If you wanted to, let's say, hunt a particular part down, so for example, well, we haven't announced this yet, but let's pretend you have a really cute, just hypothetically, you have a really cute cat car, right, with a cat tail and cat ears and paw prints on the wheels. And let's say I built a car and I'm just missing the tail part of the cat. And then I see somebody else's token car with a cat tail that I need to complete my cat car. And so I buy that car from them. I can disassemble the token. And when I disassemble the token, it gets chopped up like a chop shop for cars. It gets chopped up, I get the tail part, but now the token is gone. So that means the recorded history is gone. I forgot to say you get buffs as well. If you tokenize your car, you get extra buff stats. So for example, the more races I win, I get plus 10 to speed, plus 20 to durability. So as your race car is getting more and more famous, it's actually getting stronger and stronger. But if I wanted that cattail, do I break this car up, losing the buffs, right? Losing the recorded history just for the tail. And so there's a whole meta for people who are going to buy and sell these cars, maybe to create the perfect car, maybe because they're looking for perfect stats. We'll, depending on the rarity, we have more information about that coming out soon. Or I just want to play in Decentraland and I don't really care about that stuff, in which case practice cars might be enough, or starting out race cars might be enough. And so want to appeal to both types of gamers.
So just to be clear, so the 4 parts that make up a car, those aren't NFTs. It's only when the thing's brought together with all 4 parts that it gets minted. And then so then obviously when you're taking it apart, then you're kind of destroying the NFT effectively.
Yeah, we do plan to have. Then this is getting into the weeds of it, but let's say if my car had plus 20 speed out of winning 100 races and everything, and then I break it up, so the parts that came from it will have a little bit of residual buff, just so this came from a token car. It's got maybe plus 2, plus 3 speed, and we have a formula somewhere for that. But it should be interesting now when I reform another token car with those old buffs on it. And so I'm very interested to see how the more hardcore gamers will kind of play this market and trying to min max the stats and things like that.
I guess it's kind of interesting. So the only way to get parts is to buy a car that has the stats on it, or buy effectively the loot boxes, which are the whole the whole kind of random drops. So that's you've got kind of
right. Or but you can also win crates just by racing competitively.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's also that kind of reward for people who just want to keep racing. You will win crates of parts, but you could also just buy crates of parts if you wanted. So again, very free to play model, right? Very mobile game. Like you have the grinders and you have the the top spenders, and the game has to be fun for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's good. It's really. I'm sure there are other blockchain games doing this sort of thing, but there's not many I've heard of, and it does add this extra layer of kind of kind of sophistication in how you kind of do this. So I think it'll be kind of fascinating to see how the audience kind of reacts to that. We haven't really mentioned very much about weapons. So how do weapons fit into it? Because obviously the weapons are kind of like a secondary kind of layer. They're not part of the NFT system, or are they? I don't know.
Right now, the weapons are not going to be part of the item sale that we're going to have, but we are thinking of making them more tied to player progression. And so what that means is you get weapons from playing. So let's say everybody starts with, for example, only like a very basic boost and a very basic missile, and so everybody's playing their game and they're shooting with the same weapons, and then you see somebody come in with like a giant bear trap, dropping bear traps and trapping everybody, and you're like, how did they get that weapon, right? And so our current idea for weapons is that we'll drop them in game as you play, similar to the crates that you can win as you play. And so players who are playing more will have a bigger chance to get new weapons, right? And so that also balances out. For example, I can't just buy my way to get the fastest car, right? Because it's possible that the person who has been playing this every day for 30 days can just freeze me with their weapon. And so, but again, the weapon spec is still being made, and that's why we haven't talked a lot about it yet. And so our item sale that's coming up is going to be just parts. First for the moment.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's good. It's always the issue with blockchain games, which are obviously have a very strong transactional element to them because they're a blockchain. How you kind of deal with kind of pay to win, because obviously it's a bit harder to do than in a centralized world where you can where you're not kind of owning items in the same way. In terms of kind of development at the moment, I think you're in alpha. So what's the kind of roadmap going forward now, and when do you hope to have the game released? Obviously dependent on Decentraland.
Yeah, I think that's also the main reason why we haven't announced our roadmap, is because we are kind of waiting for Decentraland to announce their roadmap publicly. They have said that they will be open to the public probably Q2 from their Discord. Again, no real official announcement yet. We are in alpha, but it's already actually playable. So our multiplayer build is playable right now. Well, so far, the only people who have seen it are Altitude and Decentraland. But we are thinking of doing maybe kind of a live demo, because it's already up and running and it's multiplayer and everything's working. We are thinking of maybe doing like a teaser live demo before the item sale, for certain people. We don't know yet if it's press or if we're going to do a contest, but I will let you know for sure. And that kind of I think that puts us in a unique position, because usually item sales for blockchain games, you buy the items and then they make the game, right? But if we are able to pull off the live demo, again, fingers crossed, that means that you could actually play the game and then buy the items, so you get a little taste of what it would be like. So I will let you know that's our goal. Hopefully next month is just to do a live demo, but we have to figure out how to make sure like 10,000 people don't show up. Yeah, so there's probably some limiting factor that we have to do. Yeah.
I have to say, one of my biggest bugbears is item sales before a game's out there. It just kind of, I know it's obviously very popular. I certainly 2018, but I think now we moved on to more sophisticated kind of level of kind of the industry, but it happened quite a few times that you could. I think certainly when I first got into kind of blockchain games, like, oh, item sale, I'll buy some of that, and then there's still either the game doesn't come out, or there's a few games I won't mention that I bought stuff about a year ago, still holding items that are now, I noticed, labelled legacy items. So I don't quite know where they stand in the pecking order for the new game. But yeah, having something where you actually feel like, yeah, I can actually do something with this, even if it's kind of a limited functionality, I think it will be great to do that. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We've got into quite a lot of detail there about the game, which is really good. Anything else to add? What are you looking forward to, aside, obviously, you're mainly focused on your project, but anything else that you're kind of looking forward to at the moment in the world of blockchain games?
Well, just like you, I have a bunch of NFTs from last year and the recent item sales that I am very anxiously waiting to play with. Axie Infinity, they're friends of ours, and they're really doing great. I know that you just did an episode with them as well, and so we kind of hopefully want to make an experience where we'll have a gamer community that is just as active and interested in what we're doing. I would say if people want more information, our website is battleracers.io. And we have a Discord channel, and we're very open in the Discord channel. You can ask us anything. We've been posting GIFs of our gameplay on Medium as well. And so you can get all that info on our website.
Lovely. I will put links to that in the podcast notes. Well, just to say thank you very much for your time, Luna.
Thank you so much, John. It's a pleasure.
Good. And thank you, listeners, for listening to the podcast. As I say, check out all the links in the podcast notes. And if you have any comments, please let me know. You can find me on Twitter at blockchaingmg. But thanks for listening. Come back next week and find out what's going on in the world of blockchain games.